Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into bioethics. It's one of those fields that tackles the toughest choices imaginable, really tough questions about life, death, and what it even means to be human now that we have all this incredible technology. I mean, think about it. Modern medicine has given us almost godlike powers. We can swap out organs, literally edit our own DNA, and keep a body going long after, the person we knew is gone. And all that power? It forces us to ask these profound questions that our ancestors never, ever had to worry about. And that leads to an even deeper, more personal question. What does a good life even look like? Is it just not being in pain? Is it being able to laugh with your friends? Or something else? The way you answer that is deeply, deeply personal, and it directly impacts the choices we make for ourselves and the people we love. So, who gets the final say? Is it the doctor with all their medical training? Is it the patient based on their own personal values? What about the family, who are often caught right in the middle? Or does society get to weigh in? This clash between expertise, personal beliefs, and authority is the exact reason this whole new field of study had to be created. So, what is bioethics, really? Well, at its heart, it's about taking our moral beliefs and applying them to the life sciences. You can think of it as a bridge, connecting the hard facts of biology with our very human values. But that begs the question, why did this field suddenly explode in the 20th century, when people have been thinking about medical ethics for thousands of years? Okay, let's get right into it. To really get why bioethics became so necessary, you have to understand two huge changes in society that made the old way of thinking just not enough anymore. The first shift was just a straight-up technological revolution. All of a sudden, we had machines that could clean your blood for you, we were successfully transplanting organs, and ventilators could breathe for a person indefinitely. For the first time in human history, we had this overwhelming menu of choices for how life could begin and end. And these new technologies created these agonizing new problems. The old questions were usually about a doctor's duty to a patient, but the new questions were bigger. They were about the meaning of life and death itself. These weren't just medical questions anymore. They were deep moral questions. The second big shift was social. Our societies became what's called morally pluralistic. And that's just a fancy way of saying we no longer live in small towns where pretty much everyone shares the same religion or moral code. Now we have all these different and sometimes clashing belief systems living right next to each other. And this table here, it just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you have traditional medical ethics, very focused on the doctor's duty, and it kind of assumed everyone was on the same page, morally speaking. But bioethics, on the right, had to grow up in a world with tons of different beliefs and these crazy new technologies. It had to create a new, shared public language to talk about all this stuff, and that meant shifting the focus to the patient's rights and choices. All right, let's go a little deeper, because one of the really fascinating things bioethics shows us is that medicine isn't nearly as objective and scientific as we think it is. Turns out, it's loaded with hidden values. A really important idea here is something called social construction. Basically, it's the idea that even though medicine is based in science, what we decide to call health or disease is also shaped by our culture and our values. For example, is being really, really shy a medical condition? Well, our society's values help decide where we draw that line. And these questions on the slide really get to the heart of it, don't they? Is getting old a disease we should try to cure, or is it just a natural part of life? Is infertility a medical problem that needs treatment? The answers to these questions are not in a biology textbook. They are massive value judgments that quietly shape our entire healthcare system. So, if the problems are this complicated, and even our basic definitions are up for debate, how in the world do we start to untangle all this? How do we make good decisions? This is where bioethics gets super practical. It gives us a toolkit. Now, it's not a toolkit full of easy answers, but it's full of essential principles that are like a compass. They help us get our bearings and give some structure to our conversations. The first and maybe the most important principle of all is a deep respect for each individual person. This is the foundation for things you've probably heard of, like patient autonomy and informed consent. It just means that we have to recognize that every single person has dignity and is ultimately the boss of their own life and their own body. This classic thought experiment really drives the point home in a pretty stark way. You just can't sacrifice one person for the good of the group. Their individual rights and their dignity matter too much. This principle is like a powerful handbrake that stops us from just using people as tools to get something else done. Okay, so the second major principle in our toolkit is called utilitarianism. And this one kind of flips the script. It asks us to step back from just looking at individual rights and to look at the bigger picture. It's all about the consequences of our actions, trying to choose the option that creates the most good and the least harm for the largest number of people. And this utilitarian idea really has two sides of the same coin. On one side, you've got non-maleficence, which you probably know as first, do no harm. It's the basic duty to not hurt people. But on the other side, you have beneficence, which is a more active duty to actually do good and to work for the well-being of others. Okay, let's zoom out for a second. We've got our toolkit. We have these two powerful but really different principles, and that brings us right to the main event, the core challenge that this whole toolkit is designed to help us with. So here it is, the most important point. These two principles, respect for persons, which is all about the individual, and utilitarianism, which is all about the group, they are often in direct conflict with each other. I mean, what do you do when one person's choice could hurt a lot of other people, or when helping the community means you have to limit someone's freedom? This tension, this is the absolute heart of bioethics. It is the constant, difficult job of trying to find a balance between these two powerful moral ideas. Pretty much every big bioethical debate you can think of, from vaccine mandates to deciding who gets a scarce organ, it's a version of this exact same conflict. And you know, that's the real magic of the bioethics toolkit. It doesn't just hand you a simple solution. What it does is it gives all of us a shared language and a structured way to talk about these impossible choices together. It makes sure we're at least looking at the problem from all the most important angles before we decide what to do. So we want to leave you with this thought. As our power to reshape life itself just keeps getting more and more powerful, I'm talking about AI in medicine, genetic engineering, brain implants. Are these ethical tools going to be enough? Are the frameworks we built in the 20th century strong enough for the choices we're going to face in the 21st? That's a question for all of us to think about.